Hello makers, my name is Mr. Rora. Thank you for joining me in our session today of how to make using Tinkercad and how to make a 3D keychain. Now, what we're going to be doing today is we are going to be designing a keychain on a program called Tinkercad. If you're not familiar with Tinkercad, it's a really cool program where you can make online, you can make some 3D objects. Now, in conjunction, I'm going to get those files and I'm going to actually print them out using a 3D printer. Now, if you don't know what a 3D printer is, they're these really cool machines that will actually print three-dimensional devices, thus 3D. And it uses this thing called filament, which is kind of like a plastic, and they make the filaments out of different plastics. And we're going to actually go take your design and we're going to print it and send it to your school. And then you'll have to go pick it up at your school. But with that said, I mean, it's this really cool concept. And so because it's going to be printed in real life, we're going to have to like follow certain rules when we're designing it. So all in all, it should be straightforward. It might be a little bit laggy because some people's internet might not be the best. So what I've decided to do, rather than make this a live event, I've decided to make this a YouTube event so that you guys can, if I give you instructions, you can pause and then you can do that instruction rather than trying really hard to keep up with me. I'm going to try and figure out a way to do a chat and where hopefully I can field questions as the event is going on, or I can jump onto a Google Meet if you're having certain problems. But this is new for all of us, so let's see if it works out. And so let's get started. So before I show you how to use Tinkercad, I want to explain a few things that are really important for you to know. Now, this is a empty project that is on Tinkercad, and you're gonna actually create a 3D object. In this case, we're gonna create a keychain. And right here, I've given you a few examples of the different types of keychains you can make. Now, you're gonna notice a feature about all of my keychains. If I go to the size, they're gonna be 16 by 65. We wanna keep it in that range of width and height. Actually, length and height. The width, we don't want it to go beyond 6 millimeters. Because once you do that, you get a really thick object, and you don't want that. You want a keychain to be relatively small. So keep that number in mind, 6. You don't want it to be in total larger than 6. Now, if I change the view of this and you see this, you're going to see from the edge these different objects. And let me get a little bit closer. Let me zoom in a little bit. You're going to see that they're all about the same height. This orange one is probably the highest one, and that is a total of 6 millimeters high. So when it gets printed, it's going to be 6 millimeters high. But from the side, I like this view because you can really see the different details between these different designs. And if we get a top view, and if I just go back to the home view, you get to see how they're put together. These are all made through different parts just using the basic shapes. There are other shapes for you guys to play with, but for the purposes of this tutorial, we want to keep it within the basic shapes. So keep it here, play around with them. You're going to remix your own. We are going to build something that is very similar to this red one at the bottom or this green one at the bottom. If you so choose and feel comfortable as you're using this program and you just get it and you understand it, feel free to remix it any way you want. The only thing I'm going to ask is that it's no wider than 65, and the height of it, the length of it, should I say, is no larger than 20. So 65 by 20. And since it's a keychain, there always has to be some sort of hole in it so that you can actually attach it to a keychain. So let's get started and let's get you on to Tinkercad.
In order to make your own Tinkercad keychain, you're going to have to join Tinkercad. So what you're going to do first is scroll down to the bottom of the page and we see step 1, 2, and 3. You're going to notice that join Tinkercad is hyperlinked. Click on that and you're going to join my Tinkercad class. So once you come here, it's a specific link. Go ahead and use the Google button to join my class. So you click on it. You're going to have to allow it, Google to allow it access. So choose your account and go ahead and press continue. You don't have to press the check mark box because it'll just send you spam email. So just go ahead and press continue. And once you do, you're now in my Tinkercad class. It's going to want to give you a training, but we're not going to do that right now because I'm going to go over the basics of movement. So just go ahead and close this box. If you want to access these trainings, which include things like movement and new files, you can go ahead and access them through the Lessons tab on your homepage. In order for you to create a keychain, you're going to have to press the blue button that says Create a New Design. Once you do, it'll open up the work plane. Before we do any work on the work plane, we're going to change the name of a file. So I'd like to change the name of the file to Keychain, then type in your name, then type what high school you'd like me to send your keychain design to once I'm able to print it using a 3D printer. This is very important to put in your high school is because if you don't, I'm not going to know where to send that file to, and I'm not going to print it out if I don't know where to send it to. So please make sure you include the last thing in, which is your high school. I'm putting Arroyo because I'm an Arroyo high school teacher. If you're not from Arroyo, please don't hold that against me because I want everyone here to do a good design and I don't care where you're from. The first thing we need to go over is movement. How do you control the movement of the work plane? This is a 3D environment, so we need to know how to zoom in, zoom out. So you can zoom in using your scroll if you're using a mouse. So just using my scroll on my mouse, or I can use the plus or minus buttons right here on the far left of my screen. Another thing we need to learn how to do is we need to learn how to rotate our work plane. So we can do that by holding down the control button with our finger, and then on the mouse or the trackpad, we drag and we spin. And we can move in lots of different directions. We can go underneath the design. We can go above the design. We can rotate the design to our desired location. A third option is this box that says top front on it. If we click on any part of the object, say we want a top view, we click on the top button and it takes us to a top view. If we'd like a top right view, we click on that, it gives us a top right. And so anywhere, this is a very interactive and useful box that teaches us, that will allow us to easily see our design from different perspectives. So now that we have the basics of how to navigate the different angles, let's go over the basics of how to add shapes. I'm going to add a box to my workplace simply by dragging and dropping onto our workplace. And if we notice, and we get a front view, that shape is now lying flat on the work plane. That is important because when I'm 3D printing it has to be pressing onto that work plane. Otherwise, it's going to print floating, and we know that because of gravity, that is impossible. Now we want to adjust the size of this box. Right now it's a perfect 20 by 20 square. We want to adjust that to make it a 5 by 20 by 60 rectangle. So we want to be 5 millimeters tall, basically. So if I go onto this little box in the middle and I click on it, there's a few things I can do. I can manually adjust it by pressing 5, and it's going to shrink. And if I click on these, I can adjust these as well by clicking on this. This is the easiest way, and I want to make it 60. And I press return or enter. And I come right here in 20. In 20 is perfect. Now I want to give this like an oblong shape. So I'm going to add a cylinder. to this, and I want it to be right about in the center, and see where I can click on this and I can manually adjust this again, or I can just drag and drop. I really want to make sure that it's the same size, and it'll tell me. And I like the look of this. I want to make sure that it's perfectly touching, and I'm press top, and I want to make sure that it's touching both the top and the bottom. My circle looks a little off, so using the arrow keys, I can adjust where it is, and I really like the placement of that. And I want to reproduce that on the opposite end. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate using the buttons up on the top left, duplicate and repeat. So now I have two options, or two cylinders right on top of each other. So I'm going to drag and move that to the opposite end. And I have it on perfectly. Oh, forgive my updates. And I have a nice little shape that I like. Now I want to make this and merge them, these three objects, so that the program reads this as one large object. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag and choose all of these. And right here, there is a group button, which I'm going to now press. So I group it, and now it reads it as one object. So when it prints, this is going to be one smooth object. And I'm going to change the view a little bit so you can see. And you see that is a 3D image. Now next we're going to add our name. So within this object we created, we're going to create and put in our name. So what I'm going to do is add text to it. The easiest way to do this is to simply, in the basic shapes, there's a text option. So I'm going to go ahead and drag this. And you're going to notice that it just simply says text. So instead of text, I'm going to type in Aurora, which is my last name. For you, it might be something different, and probably is something different. But mine is Aurora. I'm going to do this. I can choose which font. There are not a lot of fonts, unfortunately. You only have the choice of these four. My favorite for these fonts are multi-language. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to place this object within, by dragging and moving it, I'm going to place this object within the one we just created. And for this part, everyone's name is going to be a little bit different. So I'm literally just going to eyeball it. Now seeing this from the top, I want to make sure that it's sort of centered on my object, and I can either choose to move the object or my name, and that's fine. Now look at that. That's perfectly placed inside that. The only problem with this is that they're both plastic, and the printer that I'm using does not use two different color filaments. It only uses one. So if we printed this, it would just look like one big thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select my last name, and instead of it being a solid, I'm going to make it a whole. Now, once I do that, I'm going to go ahead with my mouse, drag to choose all the objects, and then once again group them. And look at what happens. Now, I have Aurora, and it goes all the way through the object. There's only one problem with this, and I'm going to zoom in so we can see the problem with this. If I'm 3D printing this, I have spaces and gaps right here where it's going to print and it's not going to hold on to anything. So I'm actually going to need to create supports for this. So using a box, and I'm going to use, and I'm going to adjust it, and I'm just going to eyeball all of this. I'm going to make it about 2 millimeters thick. Remember, it's 5, so we want, it's 5 tall, so let's change it to 5 for a height of 5. And it doesn't have to be 20. Let's make it a little bit smaller than 20. And now let's drag this. Once again, I'm just eyeballing things right here. These are the fine nuances. Make this a little shorter. Maybe instead of making you might have to be able to adjust this from another angle. And I want to change this to 1 now. So seeing this, gonna adjust it with using my arrows. Not in love with those results, so just come in right here. There you go. So I can copy that little part, put that in my O, try and make that as centered as possible. Copy that again. I don't need it on my U, but I do need it on my A. And so now when it prints out, those little tabs will be connected. But one more time, I'm going to select all the objects and I'm going to group them. And now I have one object. And look at what I did. I made these objects a little bit too low. And so that's fixable. So I'm going to ungroup them real quick. So these objects are too low. So what I'm doing is I'm clicking on the object. And the cone that appears, I'm adjusting the height of it by clicking and dragging up. And it's just 1 millimeter too low, and that's below the printer surface, which cannot be. So I have to adjust this. Maybe you didn't make this mistake, but I did. So I'm showing you that this happens and how to fix it. There you go. So now I'll group these again. There's one solid object, and my name will come out very well on this. Remember, I can't go below this plane because that's the print surface. Now the last thing I need to make is a little cylinder actually to put this on a keychain. So I'd like to also add one more detail. I am a teacher, so I want to put Mr. Rora. So let's put MR. Mr. I'm going to make this really small. I'm actually going to rotate this 90 degrees. And I'm going to adjust this right here to 5. Oh, let me just adjust it right here. It's easier. I'm going to make this a hole. I'm going to merge it. Did that out of order. Let me make Aurora. There you go. Group these objects. Double check that it went all the way through, and it did. So perfect. And if you do make a mistake, make sure you use the undo button. And then I'm going to add a third shape. Now the shape I want to add is a tube. And I'm going to add this tube, drag and drop it. Put it right here. But I made everything 5, but this time I'm going to make this 4, actually, so it's just a little bit smaller. I'm going to reduce the size of this to a radius of about probably 10. So we have 10 right here. Let's change this to 10. And I'm going to adjust this so it comes into here, but it doesn't run into any of my other objects. Perfect. Let me select all and group it again. And now I have one object, and it's going to look like this, and be ready for print. And this is how you make your 3D keychain.
Actually, before we move forward, let me show you what your keychains are going to look like after they're printed. So here they are. So I've gotten ahead and I printed these objects. And you're going to notice that it has a plastic bed because in order to print, it needs that bed to stick to something. Now, you're going to notice I have Mr. Aurora printed twice in these 2 different designs. We designed this one together, or something similar to that, not exactly. And this was kind of a modification of that same design. Hopefully you feel empowered enough to play with it, but I really want to point out a few things and what I like and don't like about this. When I'm thinking about putting this on my keychain, I'm looking at this. This has a width of 6 millimeters, and I feel like that's a little thick, whereas the bottom one is a 5, and even though it's only a 1 millimeter difference, it seems a lot better. So let's tear these apart, and I just want to do this in front of the camera. And it just, see, it's just a film, and it cracks apart, and now it's on this. So the 6 millimeter thickness, which when I'm thinking about putting this on my keys, do I want this hanging off of it like that? Compared to my tile, if you guys know what that is, it's about as thick or slightly thicker. Whereas this one, this is my second design. I'm gonna kind of take it off. This is my second design. And I feel like this one might fit a little bit better. In fact, let me put it on. And so right here, I have my keychain. So I just wanted to show you what that looks like. Like I said, feel free to remix your designs. You don't have to do it exactly the way I did, but try and keep it within those parameters. You don't want it too much longer than this. So keep it around 65 width, and I would say the thickness of it, let's keep it around 5, guys. We don't want to go too much. Even with the 6, I think this is too thick. That's just the honest truth. So with that said, I guess thank you for coming and watching the instructions. Um, please contact me through the chat, or you can join the Google Meet that I will include in the website if you need to talk to me for whatever reason. Otherwise, take the time, look at the pictures I provided for you to provide you inspiration on making your own design. And let's make something great, and I'll print it and send it to you guys. Have a great day.